tax rate in this country is too high. We need to broaden the base. He said all these manufacturers are willing to give up their special benefits. They've spent millions of dollars in lobbying to get those special benefits, and that's why they continue to persist. What we need to do is we need to figure out how we're going to take the tax system from being one that basically benefits people who ship jobs overseas, get that money back into our economy. And I'll tell you this, I am not Harry Reid. I don't know how to say it more clearly. I have a lot of respect for anyone who serves, whether they're on the Republican side of the aisle or the Democratic side of the aisle. But I am my own person, and I have done a lot of thinking about this. I have a lot of experience in this, and I believe we can move the country forward if we just sit down and solve the problem, but not if we hide behind. I have a bill that does some deductions and flattens the rate, but I won't tell you what they are. That's not the way forward.
All right, we're out of time for the crosstalk. Our next question will be presented by Ms. Sprincenatic.
Good evening, Ms. Heitkamp, Representative Berg.
More.
This next question is on energy, and we'll go to Ms. Heitkamp first. Everyone talks about a need for a comprehensive national energy policy. Please outline the key provisions that you think should be part of such a policy.
I couldn't be clearer. I believe that we have to have a position for fossil fuels, both oil and gas and coal. It is absolutely critical for our economy that we continue to grow our domestic fossil fuel industry. I also believe that there has to be a path forward for renewables, whether it's biofuels, geothermal, whether we're looking at doing something with wind, which has been incredibly important in our state. And so it truly has to be comprehensive, and there has to be a commitment from everyone to do it. Now let me tell you the other portions of this. We have to have a way to move our energy. We have a declining power grid. That needs to be fixed. We need to make the investments because that is the certainty and the redundancy that we need for American manufacturing and to grow our economy. The other thing we need to do is we need to have pipelines. Keystone Pipeline, it was absolutely a folly on the President's part not to approve the Keystone Pipeline. That's a way to move oil. It's a way to expand the North American energy base and fossil fuel base. We have all forms of energy right here in North Dakota. I have supported it for years. I have been a defender of the coal industry, a defender of the oil industry, and I will continue to do that in the United States Senate.
Representative Berg.
Well, I think we can learn a lot from North Dakota in this. You know, years ago we had many different policies and they're really disjointed. Governor Hoeven and I and legislators in the House and Senate, we came together and put together Empower. And what Empower is it includes all the above. It includes coal, oil, and gas, as well as ethanol, wind, and other renewables. Bringing that system together really brought our focus in North Dakota together to move in that direction. Our challenge in Washington is when the President says all the above, he means nothing from below. 85% of our energy in America comes from coal, oil, and gas. Our gasoline prices have doubled over the last 4 years. You talk about tough times for the middle class. In America, a couple things have happened. The median income's gone from $54,000 down to $50,000. The price of gas has gone up to probably $2,000 a vehicle. And health care, health insurance has gone up $2,500. These are problems. We've passed 30 bipartisan bills to move energy forward, but the regulatory environment, again, I go back to Harry Reid, who controls what's voted on in the Senate, has said, I hate oil, or oil and coal are making us sick, and they're harming America. My opponent says she's for North Dakota. She's pledged her support to Harry Reid, who's anti-North Dakota.
As much as Congressman Berg would like Harry Reid to be standing over here, I don't think that's happening anytime soon. So I'd like to talk about my record and who I am and what I've done. I think anyone who knows my...
Ms. Heitkamp, can I just remind the audience to please hold any reactions until the end of this forum? Thank you.
Anyone who knows what my history knows that I've been involved in the oil and gas industry. I've been involved in the coal industry for years. Oil and gas, when times were tough, When oil prices were low, we were able to pass stripper well exemptions. We were able to pass marginal well benefits for exemptions and reductions on the oil extraction tax, and we were able to do enhanced oil recovery incentives. You know, those are all powerful tools that were used to help bridge into the new oil economy. When I served on the Industrial Commission, we started the whole series of discussions about horizontal drilling and what that can do, and bringing new technologies to North Dakota. When I served on the Industrial Commission and when I was Attorney General, I went to Minnesota and fought for the coal industry. In fact, earned a Lignite Leader Award for that work. I am as committed to North Dakota's energy industry as anyone can be. And I don't know that there'd be a better advocate in Washington than someone who would stand and say, I've been there, I have this experience, I can get the job done, and I understand what those challenges are. And so that's what I'm hoping to do when I go to Washington, D.C., represent this growing industry and include in it biofuels and wind, which the Republican Party's been very hostile to production tax credits, geothermal, using every form of energy to make it work in this country.
Well, I'd like to say, obviously, there is a problem. Keystone's not built. And it's not built because the Senate Majority Leader controls what's voting, has not brought it up for a vote. Our President has been opposed to it as well. Our coal industry, one of the things that stunned me more than anything else this last year is EPA came out with new regulations on new coal plants. And they were so stringent that you could not build a new coal plant with the technology we have today. But you know what? It was silent. It was silent because no one's planning to build a new coal to electricity plant because of the regulations and the uncertainty. There's a cloud over our energy industry. If we want energy to happen nationally like it is in North Dakota, we've got to have stability. We've got to have stability in our taxes. We have to have stability in our regulations. And we have to encourage, rather than discourage, the capital to go into and develop it.
If I can just comment.
Well, I'm not sure how we're doing this.
Yeah.
It's a free-for-all.
Yeah. Oh.
But you have 30 seconds left in crosstalk.
You know, in the last year, in fact, we have built a coal-fired power plant. It's in Dry Forks, Wyoming, and it's an amazing facility. I'm not saying that it's easy, but it can be done, and it has been done. And we need to push back against excess regulation. We cannot have EPA determining energy policy. And I, as sure as I stand here, I am firm in that belief that we have to do everything we can to protect the industry. We had regional haze rules that were, in fact, not even going to improve the quality of the air.
Thank you.
Well, and these new performance standards.
We're done with crosstalk right now. We're going to move on to the next question. It's been 3 minutes.
Okay.
The next question will actually go to Representative Berg, though. You get to start off. How would you have voted on the Farm Bill passed by the U.S. Senate? In your view, what are the necessary elements of a good Farm Bill?
Well, certainly I've said it publicly. If the Farm Bill were voted, if that were the only choice, I'd support the Senate Farm Bill. There are some challenges with it. Its link, wetlands to crop insurance are a concern for a lot of people in North Dakota. You know, my great-grandfather homesteaded in North Dakota. I was an ag econ grad. I grew up in North Dakota. My dad was a veterinarian. Agriculture is extremely important to me. My degree is in ag econ. What we need in agriculture long-term is we need the markets. We need a farm bill. We need a strong farm bill that's centered on crop insurance. There's absolutely no question on that. But we also need to ensure that we've got open markets and a place for us to get the price that we need for our great quality crops here in North Dakota. The challenge that we've had in the House is the House Ag Committee passed a farm bill as well. That didn't come out of the chamber, didn't come to the floor, and I fought back against Republican leadership very hard on that specific thing. I've worked bipartisanly to try and get that bill to the floor. It hasn't been to the floor, but my efforts, along with other efforts, have got the Speaker of the House to commit to bring that to a vote and to bring the bill and pass the bill before the end of the year. So this is just the same thing that happened in the last Farm Bill. And so we're not where we need to be, but agriculture is a key shining industry that's creating jobs and revenue for America, and we need to support it, not create a cloud of uncertainty over it.
Ms. Heitkamp.
For the first time in decades, North Dakota's member of the United States Congress has not been on the Ag Committee. I think that's hurt us. Another vote that's hurt us that Congressman Berg took was the vote for the Ryan Plan, because it signaled that you could take $160 billion out of the farm program and take a 20% cut to crop insurance, and that was okay with North Dakota. When the Senate passed the Farm Bill and it crossed over, the House had an opportunity to take that bill on. What happened is absolutely inexcusable. What happened is gridlock, and not gridlock from a partisan standpoint, but gridlock in the Republican Party. Gridlock that said, we're not going to take a farm bill because we can't get consensus, because the far right part of the caucus says you aren't going to get any crop insurance. We don't believe in crop insurance. We don't believe in a farm bill. That is absolutely, you have to have someone who will stand strong for the farm bill. Now, Congressman talks about the efforts that he had. Yes, at the very last minute, you saw a lot of flurry of activity. Let's talk about the discharge petition. The discharge petition that you circulated, you got 8 signatures from other Republicans, and there's over 40 signatures from Democrats. I don't call that success, and I don't think that's the path forward. We have to have a bipartisan farm bill, but we have to have people who represent the state who believe it's important enough to sit on the Ag Committee.
Well, I think this is part of the problem. You know, ag has been a nonpartisan issue for almost 2 years. Republicans and Democrats got together. When we had the super committee, we came up with an option that would have a reduction in spending, but everyone came together. What's happened the last few months it's been more partisan, and that's one of the problems we had in getting the bill out of the House. You know, agriculture, the Farm Bill is only about 20% production agriculture. The bulk of it is nutrition, SNAP, food stamps. And so one of the challenges in getting it passed out of the House was the people not supporting the changes to the food stamp program that has increased in spending 270% over the last 10 years. And we could not get cooperation and support to have that small change. Now, the other thing I'd like to point out, and this is, you know, for what it's worth, the Fargo Forum said your attacks were manipulated attacks. They said your attacks were politics over substance. As we're trying to pull this farm bill together, a bill that's critical to North Dakota producers, you jumped in on the tax. Now, what I'd like to say, and I've been very clear in agriculture. Agriculture is important to me. You know, my cousin passed away last spring, and he has a son that's in high school. His son is taking over the family farm. His son's not going to be able to farm unless he has a farm program in place that has crop insurance so he can go and get his operating loan. Agriculture is extremely important to me, and North Dakota producers are extremely important to me, and we shouldn't make this partisan politics.
Congressman Berg, the question that everybody in North Dakota should ask is, do we have a farm bill today? And the answer is no. You have the majority in the House. You couldn't get the farm bill passed because you couldn't get your colleagues to agree with you. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The blame to not having a farm bill, the blame for not having a farm bill lies straight and at the foot of the U.S. House of Representatives. I care deeply about the Farm Bill. There's farmers out there right now who are struggling, wondering what that safety net program is going to look like. They have to plan next year's crop, but they don't have the certainty. They don't have and they don't know, because now we're going to be negotiating this Farm Bill in middle of a fiscal crisis, and I really wonder whether we're going to get anything that is anywhere near as good as what the Senate provided.
If this were not politics, then I'm sure in the last Farm Bill that expired, you protested that expiration. I don't know where that came up, but I didn't see you protesting the expiration of the last Farm Bill. It expired and was not done.
Congressman Berg, we're looking today at who's in charge at the House of Representatives, who is our advocate in the House of Representatives, who's going to deliver a farm bill. And the bottom line is, today we do not have a farm bill because of failure in the House of Representatives. That was your job. It didn't get done.
And all I want to say is it's the same as the last Farm Bill.
All right. That's the end of crosstalk. Our next question will be directed to you from Mr. King.
Thank you. Ms. Heitkamp, as a local school board member, education is important to me and my 11-year-old son. What is your educational plan, and what role does the federal government have, if any, in that?
I think the federal government under the Bush administration, with the help of Senator Kennedy, way expanded inappropriately the role of the federal government in education. I think No Child Left Behind was wrong-headed from the beginning. I think it was a federal government takeover of local responsibility, and the best education decisions are decided locally. With that said, I think the role of the federal government should be in assisting states in things like Title I, where you take a small school district like Wyoming, North Dakota, where maybe you have 2 students who are in need of some special education. It can bankrupt the local farmers providing that special education. There is a role for the federal government there. There is a role for the federal government to begin to look at how we can transition in higher education. I believe that the cuts to the student loan program and the excess interest that was being proposed being charged on students, absolutely inappropriate. We need to have an education system that makes sure that our kids have an opportunity to go to college and that college is affordable. I think we also need to take a look at long-term Head Start, getting kids ready to serve. And the Ryan plan actually takes literally thousands of kids off Head Start, which can add to the burden of your local education because those kids aren't ready to learn. And so I'm very passionate about education.
Well, education is the bedrock to our future. There's no question. And North Dakota represents a strong state that supports education. The number of schools we have, K-12 as well as higher ed, I mean, it's absolutely critical. And I would just say this. As it relates to education, the decisions ought to be local. The challenge we have, and the challenge I saw in the legislature, was a lot of federal programs coming down with rules and regulations and red tape that made it almost impossible to run and implement the highest impact of like we do in North Dakota. You know, when one-size-fits-all rules are made in Washington where they assume every community is at least 1 million people, I mean, that doesn't work for Hettinger. It doesn't work for small towns in North Dakota. And so what we need to do is do everything we can to get those dollars to the states and to the local communities with as few strings as possible. No Child Left Behind. I mean, there's no question that started out a bipartisan thing with some good intentions, and it's failed miserably. I sponsored a bill, the A+ bill, that would allow states to opt out of No Child Left Behind. We need to, again, put those controls, put that power with the local school board, put it with the state legislature to move forward.
I agree with Congressman Berg. I think this is an area where any of us who have been involved in education in North Dakota know that if you leave our education up to the federal government, that's a path forward that we don't want. That is not a path forward for North Dakota. And so it needs to be local decisions. Now, the good news is that you're actually seeing waivers. I think now there's only 10 states that haven't gotten a waiver, and they're in the pipeline to do that. The question is, how do we guarantee a good education outcome? And, you know, the federal government shouldn't be setting the standards. Parents should be setting the standards. Parents should be involved with school boards, with local parents groups, with the teachers. I think that the best education plan in this country is making sure that we educate teachers appropriately, we continue to educate teachers, and we continue to have the ability to hire people who care deeply about children. I wouldn't be standing here if it weren't for public education. And as a good luck thing tonight, I wear my grandmother's high school graduation ring. She was never so proud in her life as she was when she graduated from high school. Unheard of in her day. And it's a reminder every day to me that I am blessed to live in a state that cares about public education. I think we need to keep education local.
I think the other component here is higher ed. Same issues apply, but the other part of that is we need an economy that's growing. I mean, we're so fortunate in North Dakota. You look at our national economy, what Barack Obama's failed policies have done is 50% of the college grads across America do not have a job. They're either unemployed or not working in their degree area. And so what we have to do is we have to create those jobs. 10 years ago, Heidi proposed paying students to stay in North Dakota, another big government solution. Pay them $5,000 to stay in the state of North Dakota. That's not why we have 680,000 people today. That's not why we have our kids coming back to North Dakota. We have it because we created a stable environment, a stable tax environment, a stable regulatory environment, and we've encouraged businesses to grow and businesses to invest in small business. And that's really what we've done in North Dakota that's caused our growth and success. That's the same thing we need to do, is trust the individuals, create the stability in our federal government. Right now we have instability.
Congressman, I'm not going to apologize for wanting to help students from North Dakota who want to stay in North Dakota pay back some of their college debt, which is the $5,000 deal. You know, I am proud of the position that we took trying to help North Dakota students so that they aren't burdened for the rest of their life with incredible college debt. A third of all the benefit, the profit from the Bank of North Dakota, even when I was there, and I'll take some responsibility for this, came on the backs of students. That's wrong. Student loan programs should be no profit, non-profit to the government, and we've got to help students out of their debt.
Well, the student loan program was taken away from North Dakota for Obamacare, another thing to pay for Obamacare.
Goodness. Yeah.
All right, that's the end of crosstalk for that question. Our next question will be directed by Ms. Brinson-Attic.
This next question will go first to Representative Berg and is on foreign policy. The American ambassador to Libya was recently killed by terrorists. Syria has descended into civil war, and the Arab Spring has turned stormy. The United States sends hundreds of millions of dollars in federal aid to countries around the world, to democracies and dictators. What should be the basic guiding principles of American foreign policy?
Well, fundamentally, I have to say that freedom is something we need to encourage across the world. But let me talk about Christopher Stevens and what happened there. I mean, his death, along with 3 others, is a tragedy. And I know that that's been in a lot of people's thoughts and prayers. We need to get to the bottom of that. And I'm not here to speculate on who did what, but we need to find out. The American people need to know. And as this thing unfolds, I hope that it can be transparent and it can be clear. And so 2 things will come out of that. Number 1 would be, if there are people that made mistakes and need to be held accountable, we can hold them accountable. But also that we can learn from that. So in the future, if we have diplomats abroad, we can ensure that we're protecting them. As it relates to other countries, and there's a lot of turmoil in the Middle East, from my perspective, that's one thing that we've done in North Dakota. We've increased oil production 500,000 barrels a day. If we can become energy independent in America, I think that helps our decision making as it relates to countries around the world, and certainly countries that are supporting terrorists.
I think our guiding principle in our foreign policy ought to be America first. Let's take a look at what benefits America's interests. You know, you take a look at Egypt. Under the original peace plan, we give tremendous amounts of foreign aid to Egypt. You know what? Right now, Egypt is threatening Israel. Egypt is threatening the region because of the Arab Spring. We have to rethink the dollars that we're sending to Egypt. We have to say these dollars are for maintaining a security and a peace. If you're not participating, you don't get these dollars. That's job 1. We have to continue our commitment in foreign policy to Israel. Israel is our strongest ally. It is our sister country, and we need to do everything we can to fulfill our commitment, which incidentally, all of the foreign aid that we give Israel, the military aid we give them, is spent right here in America on American jobs. That's one of the requirements. But when you look broadly at the Arab Spring, I think there was a lot of hope that this would be continuing democracy, and we're falling into really what has become, not secular governments, but religious governments, and we need to be gathering up all of our allies, and we need to be making a firm statement that this region needs to be stabilized, and we need to protect the people who serve in our state departments. We need to protect the people who serve in all facets, whether it's NGOs or in the State Department. If we can't secure them, then they shouldn't be there.
We can begin crosstalk on this.
I'd like to redirect it back to Representative
Sure.
Berg. You spoke regarding a few specific things, but what would you say should be the basic guiding principles? So speaking a bit more broadly, what should be guiding our foreign policy?
Well, I mean, if you're referring to the dollars spent or in general, our foreign policy, America is the leader of the world. We need to look where there are opportunities to create democracies, and we need to be supportive of those. I think it's a balance. One of the big challenges we have right now, obviously in the Middle East, is Iran. Iran is is getting close to having nuclear capabilities. From a foreign policy standpoint in the Middle East, we have to support the democracy that we have with Israel there and do what we can to prevent Iran from having the nuclear capabilities, because the next step, of course, is their ability to support terrorists, their ability now with today's technology to move nuclear bombs very easily around the world. As it relates to our foreign policy, we need to try and again, make sure that America's interests are kept in first, but we need to be close to make sure that we're not putting our country at risk, that these terrorist countries that, have a check and balance on them, if you will. I think that should be what drives our foreign policy.
I can't state this clearly enough. We cannot be a nation builder of every nation. We've got to start building our nation right here at home. And that is the strongest kind of security that we can have, which is economic security, making sure that we're growing our middle class. And when we look at our interest and how we should look at for our foreign policy, it has to be through a lens of what is best for America. Let's take China. China right now, it isn't the military threat, it's an economic threat, but yet we let them manipulate currency. We let them put tariffs and protect through their trade laws their own industry to the detriment of us. And so you can't just look at what foreign policy is through the State Department. You have to look at what our trade policy is, what our economic policy is, and how those things benefit our country.
Well, I would say one of our biggest challenges, of course, is our economic crisis here in America. What we saw in 9/11, what we saw the economic happen after that was a crisis for our country. We have to be strong economically. We have to be strong domestically. That makes us strong, makes us a force to be listened to on a national and international basis.
All right. Well, then we will move on to our next question. This one is from Ms. Heitkamp. What do you think is the biggest misperception North Dakotans have about you?
About me?
Yes. It will then go to Mr. Berg. Just you specifically right now.
That I can't swing a bat very well. That's not true. I really was. It was so funny. I was talking to a woman today, and she said her kids were watching the commercial, and they said, "Yeah, right. She really hit those balls." I said, "No, really, I did. I batted fourth when I played softball." No, I think the biggest misconception about me is that I don't know. I always feel like people know me, but what I would say is that for the last certainly 6 months, you've said you've seen commercials that say you can't trust Heidi Heitkamp. She won't. She's not who she says she is. And I think most people know that that's not true. But for the people who are doubting, I want to tell you that I was given a gift 12 years ago. When I was able to survive stage 3 breast cancer. I was given a gift of life. I was given a gift of every opportunity to serve the state and do the right thing. I believe in my heart that when I go to Washington, I will serve the people of the state of North Dakota, not a political party, not a special interest, but the needs of the people. That's why I'm doing this. And it's because of my opportunity, what I've been given, this gift of life, that I feel so strongly that this is who I am. This is what I believe. You can trust me to represent North Dakota.
Mr. Berg, what is some of the biggest misperceptions people may have about you?
I think the fundamental issue that I'd like to address, and I care so much about North Dakota. I mean, I'm so blessed. I kind of lived the North Dakota dream growing up. Working my way through college, starting a business, but I just want two things. I'm in this, it's not for me, but it's for that next generation. I want to ensure that any one of our sons or daughters or any of us can have that American dream. And I see that going away. I see it crushed by over-regulations and government growing. But the one other thing is I am committed to preserving Medicare and Social Security, committed to preserving that promise for North Dakotans, both today and seniors in the future.
So what do you think specifically people might have a misperception about you? If you could pick one thing.
Well, they maybe think I am a cleaner housekeeper than I am. I would say... I would say that. I am committed to doing the things that we've got in North Dakota, doing those things and taking those to Washington. I just feel so strongly about that. There's been a lot of different ads, obviously, that have hit. One of the things that I think is frustrating for me, of course, is the tax on a company that I haven't been involved with for 60 years. And it's awful to have those people demonized for personal gain in a political campaign.
Anything else you guys would like to add? This is Crosstalk.
No, I mean, unless you want me to respond to that. And this is what I would say. You know, for the last how many months we've heard I've had absolutely no involvement. But yet we've got FEC reports that say I'm an employer. I have FEC reports that say I own the business. And we have an affidavit that was signed by Congressman Berg saying he was affiliated with this company. He spoke as a spokesperson. He did a whole series of interviews in Grand Forks basically saying we run these companies together. This is how we manage it. And I think it is unfair for him to basically say that it's a clerical error or someone else's mistake when in fact every piece of evidence that you look, except for what's being discussed right now, actually points to an affiliation and involvement.
There couldn't be anything more farther and misleading. You know, when I was out of college, we started a business. That business was Midwest Management. After 5 years, I left that business and started another business called Goldmark. It was focused in the commercial real estate business. After I left Midwest Management, it changed its name. I have not been involved in that business for 26 years. But I'm not being attacked on the business that I am involved with as an ownership. I'm being attacked on a business that I haven't been involved with for 26 years. And what's frustrating for me is those employees, those owners, the people that have grown that company. I don't deserve any credit for their growth, but they don't deserve to have their efforts and work discredited and demonized for political personal gain. Yeah. I mean, it would be like a few years prior to that, you were in the EPA. If I said everything the EPA does is because of you're responsible for today, that's absolutely wrong. You're an attorney. You know the law. You know where my ownership interests were.
And Congressman Berg, I'm pretty sure if you tried to blame me for everything that the EPA did and a fact check,
it would be a long night.
Yeah,
it would be a long night.
No lie about that.
Very long night.
That you'd get a big stamp of false. The local television station here fact checked these claims and put a big stamp of true on them. And so it's a matter of perception. It's a matter of backing away from it. But the reality is that when you fact check what's said, and from independent sources, not me.
26 years I've not been involved in the ownership or management, and it's just awful that we've got a company, a North Dakota company that's focused in housing, that you're taking advantage of for political gain when we have a state that housing is so desperate right now. I think that's wrong, and obviously that's frustrating for me.
Congressman Berg, the reason why this has been so difficult is because out of all of this, we hear story after story of people who have been denied their security deposit, have been denied an out, even though they've suffered post-traumatic stress from assaults. We have heard story after story. And so, you know, I think it would be wise for that company to re-examine some of their policies.
Their door would be wide open for you to sit down and talk to.
All right. That ends the crosstalk section for that question. Our next question will come from Mr. King.
Thank you, Stacy. Representative Berg, this is directed to you at first. How far would you go to see the U.S. Senate and House reach agreement on major legislation? And how important is the ability to compromise in doing the people's business? And please give specifics.
Well, I mean, it's absolutely critical. I mean, we're at a point, quite frankly, in the next 2 years, we're one budget away from either going down the road of Greece or coming back in prosperity. I will do anything I can to reach across the aisle and reach an agreement. I think the big issues are, number one, the budget. Number two is taxation. We need a stable tax plan so people can invest in their small business and grow. They need to have that certainty. The other thing is regulations. You know, we've had a number of bipartisan bills, but one of the most important bills we passed out of the House is called the REINS Act. And what that is like in North Dakota, an agency passes a bill, or the legislature passes a bill, it goes to the agency, they write the rules. Before the rules are imposed on the public, what happens is they go to administrative rules, Republicans, Democrats, and they approve those rules before they're imposed on the public. That's what we need to do from a regulatory standpoint at the national level. That's what the REINS Act did. That's another bill that is sitting in the Senate, has not been brought up, and I can appreciate Heidi saying that she's not Harry Reid. The problem is her commitment to vote for Harry Reid puts him in power, and he won't bring those bills to the floor. And so I have 70% of the bills that I've sponsored and been involved with have been co-sponsored on a bipartisan nature. That's the way we're going to move this thing forward. Is I believe we need to change the control of the Senate and then reach out in a bipartisan way.
Congressman Berg signed a pledge to Grover Norquist and said, I'll agree that I'll vote the way you want me to vote on all of these issues, on issues of taxation. Last year, at the end, when they were trying to solve this problem of the fiscal cliff, 2 Congress people, one Democrat and one Republican, started working on a bipartisan solution to the fiscal cliff. And Grover Norquist picked up the phone and said, no compromise. No compromise. If you compromise, we will come after you and get you in the primary. We will take you out of your seat. And it scared people away from actually getting it done. These are the partnerships Congressman Berg has established, and it does not bode well to send someone who establishes those partnerships when you're talking about compromise. And so when you look at my record of working across the party line and across party aisles, I think you're going to see some kind of remarkable things. Partnering up with the Constitution Party to fight back on privacy invasions. Partnering with the head of the Republican Party to protect private property. Partnering with anyone who will work with me in the legislature to protect kids. I have a record of working across party aisles. I don't think that there really is a record, especially in the legislature, that Congressman Berg has about being very bipartisan.
Well, I think I've worked for 26 years in the North Dakota legislature. We do come together. We get things done. The problem out in D.C. is the partisanship. And the best example of the partisanship is Obamacare. Here's a bill that was passed. Didn't go through the normal committee process. It was done behind closed doors. There's Republicans in the U.S. House of Representatives, physicians, where their life has been taking care of patients. They weren't included in any of the debate. In fact, we all know the quotes by the Nancy Pelosi, Speaker of the House. We've got to pass it to see what's in it. There was not one Republican vote on the health care bill. Health care is too important to try and solve on a partisan nature. But yet, that's what happened. It passed without a Republican vote in the House or Senate, and it was something that each day we're now looking at the $1.7 trillion cost, the independent board that's going to make decisions for our seniors, the $716 billion out of Medicare. But the most frustrating thing for me is when that passed, my opponent didn't stand up and say, hey, this needs to be bipartisan. My opponent held rallies around the state saying, we've got to get this passed, we've got to get this passed, and we've got to see it in our rearview mirror. The Republican message is getting out. That's not bipartisanship.
Yeah. Congressman
That's partisanship.
Berg, neither one of us were in the Congress when the Affordable Care Act passed. One of us has been there since then. And one of us has a mantra, which is a partisan mantra, of repeal and replace, voting 33 times to repeal the act, never once introducing a bill that would replace. So that's the record. And let me kind of explain why that's significant, because I think if you came and said, as I've been saying, there's good and bad in this health care law. We need to keep the good and get rid of the bad. If somebody from the Republican side had actually extended that hand and said, let's fix this, let's move forward, let's get rid of the bad stuff, I think there would have been a whole lot of better dialogue and we'd be further ahead. I agree with Congressman Berg. This is far too important to politicize, and I think for the last 2 election cycles, there's been an unwillingness to sit down and solve the problem in this country of health care because they'd rather use it as a political wedge issue to get elected, and that is almost too cynical, and it is one of the reasons why I'm in this race, because I'm tired of the cynicism, I'm tired of the partisanship. This is way too important. We need to do everything we can to fix
There couldn't be an example more clear on the partisanship and what's wrong out there than Obamacare. It needs to be repealed. I mean, again, here's something that 70% of the people in North Dakota didn't want, and yet it was shoved through in the middle of the night. And rather than hold town halls and get input from people, my opponent went around the state with rallies to campaign for it and push for it rather than get the input. The way the legislative process needs to work is we need to have open committees, bring everyone together, patients and providers, and work out a solution that's right for North Dakota.
All right. Well, thank you. Unfortunately, we are out of time for tonight. So we are going to begin with our closing. You now each have 90 seconds to provide a closing statement, and we will start with you, Representative Berg.
Well, I'd like to thank our sponsors, the moderators. I'd like to thank Heidi. I'd like to thank everyone that's here and everyone that's listening at home. You know, here in North Dakota, we don't hide from our problems. We fix them. We don't wait for someone to tell us when to work, where to work, or how to work. We just work. And we'd rather live within our means than force our kids to live with our debt. You know, as I've traveled North Dakota, I've talked to people that have concerns about the challenges facing our country. But one guy summed it up, and he was a superintendent. And he said to me, every day I see students, and I'm worried about their future. He looked me in the eye and said, Rick, you've got to get this fixed. That's why I'm in this race. I'm in this race for my 13-year-old son, for our children and our grandchildren. I'm running to stop Washington from ruining our economy with debts we can't afford to pay back. I'm running to stop over-regulating our economy and start growing our economy. I'm running to stop Obamacare from making our health care decisions for us. I'm running because I believe we can fix this, and we can restore the promise of the American dream to our children and future generations if we take the North Dakota way to the U.S. Senate. So I'm asking for your vote, and I'd really appreciate your support in changing America. I know we can get this done. Thank you, and God bless.
I, too, would like to thank Congressman Berg and all the people who attended tonight, and certainly the people who hung with us and who are watching the debate. You know, I like to tell a story because after we have long discussions across North Dakota, and I've been everywhere in the state, and I've talked to all manner of people, I have had so much fun in this reconnecting with North Dakotans. And after we talk about partisanship and what's destroying our country, what's destroying our future for our children, because we don't solve problems, because we have a government of slogans and not solutions, we have a government of partisans who don't care enough about the American public to do the right thing, people say, I get that you feel that way. And I really believe that you think you can go to Washington and fix it. So tell me how you're going to do that, because that place is so broken. And I tell him a story about when I was Attorney General and I was fighting the fight on domestic violence and getting out there and trying to change the way we dealt with that problem. And I was in Wafton, and an older gentleman came up and put his finger in my face. He said, listen here, girlie, men will always beat their wives and you can't stop them. And I said, you know, I don't think that's true. I certainly hope it's not true. But I do know I can't live in a world where we don't try. I want the opportunity to try, to fix America's problems, to fix the problems for our future and for my children and for Rick's son and for all of the children of North Dakota, for all of our futures. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank the candidates tonight. I would also like to thank Dakota Media Access, the Bismarck Tribune, and also all the volunteers from the League of Women Voters for organizing this debate tonight. Thank you to the viewers at home and also the audience members here tonight at Horizon Middle School for taking time to learn about the issues and a little bit more about our candidates for the U.S. Senate. This recorded program will replay several times on Government Access, Cable Channel 2. It will also be available for online viewing at freetv.org. That's freetv.org in the days leading up to the election on November 6th. Before we close this forum, I want to remind you that voting in North Dakota is very simple, and you can find out voting information at your county auditor's office or from the office of the North Dakota Secretary of State. Thank you, and have a great night.